Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are still with you live from the Grand Egyptian Museum. Now we're talking about everything concerning the artifacts that will be transferred or that have been already transferred here to the museum. This great project, a dream for every Egyptian. In the previous segment, we were talking about one of the masterpieces that will be kept here in the museum, which boat of Hopo. Of course, this is a wooden part, and now we'll be talking about the wooden parts that will be included here in the museum with our guest, Dr. Medhat Abdullah. He's the director of the Wood Museum here at the Grand Egyptian Museum. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for joining us, and definitely it's an important topic because what you're doing in terms of conservation for specific wood material is one of the most difficult conservation labs, I guess.
Yeah.
And if you can give us a briefing about the mission that you have and the artifacts that you're trying to conserve.
Actually, we have three missions in our lab. Conservation and illustration are wooden artifacts that will be displayed in the Grand Egyptian Museum, and also making experimental study with the materials that we are using in the conservation to avoid the side effects of these materials.
Yes.
And the third mission is studying the techniques that have been used in ancient Egypt in making their objects, how the ancient Egyptians make their wooden objects, what materials they are using, which techniques they are using. So we study all these techniques and all these materials before applying our conservation processes.
Okay, what are the artifacts that have been restored so far, the wooden parts?
Actually, we received many pieces from many eras, different eras, right? But one of them is the Tutankhamun collection. We received some of the funerary artifacts from Tutankhamun, and this is like the masterpiece of the gilded bed. It was an exhibit piece. It was in the storeroom. We received that in the wood lab, and we start the processes of conservation, because you know that when you receive any object, you didn't apply any restoration before making your proposal plan and making a sequence of conservation. We start these steps by documentation, making documentation by using some of the 3D softwares and 2D softwares, and making some analysis and examination to know everything about this object, to identify the deterioration aspects we found on the object, and also after that we make our proposal for conservation, our conservation plan, with many solutions for conservation.
So let's speak about the wood, because the wood, there are different types of wood.
Yeah.
And which makes your job more difficult.
Yeah.
And we'd like to know from you more about what types of wood were the ancient Egyptians using in their artifacts.
Actually, the ancient Egyptians used different species of wood. And one of them, the imported wood, comes from foreign countries, and some of them is indigenous wood or native wood. The local wood is the Ficus sycamorus, and
which is there in Egypt everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
This tree
in
is
the country,
very known. Yes.
Yeah, everyone can see that in the canals and in their countries.
So that was there since the ancient Egyptians.
Yeah. And the ancient Egyptians used this wood in making their coffins, chairs, beds, and they imported some wood from Lebanon. And the most famous wood is the cypress of Lebanon.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they come of them from Ethiopia,
Okay.
like ebony.
Ebony, yes, of course.
Yeah, and they use it in making their funerary furniture,
Okay.
and decorated the native by the imported wood, because you know that in Egypt the wood is very sensitive to the insects, like Ficus sycamores.
Yes.
It is very sensitive to the insects and can be decay quickly. So they use the acacia wood for making
Which is also imported.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
What about how they made or how they built boats? Because during the era of Hatshepsut, she went to Ethiopia, which is Punt,
Yeah.
back in history. And when I went to Hatshepsut Temple in Luxor,
Yeah.
I saw the drawings of the boats and even the colored fish of. She registered everything. So building boats for ancient Egyptians. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, yeah. You know that they use the cassia wood especially for making the boats, and also in some cases they use the cedrus of Lebanon. And they cut this tree into many panels, and you know that they collect these panels by using wooden dowels. And you know that in ancient Egypt they use different technique for wooden joints. And they use the wooden dowels and mortise and tenons for collecting these panels together. And then he put these ropes between the panels to prevent the water from coming into the boat.
Yes.
And then in some cases he make some of the you know, the badals from hardwood. Used directly in the water.
Yes. And what were the secrets that you discovered? You know, a conservation lab, definitely you're zooming into each and every detail of those artifacts.
And secrets come up.
Exactly. What were the secrets that were discovered by the lab in the use of the pharaohs?
Do you know something? We received some of the Tutankhamun sticks, and we find that it was decorated with tree bark.
With
bark, the outer layer of the tree.
Okay.
The tree bark, yes.
Yeah, and that is very thin layer. And in ancient Egypt, they cut this tree bark into small, less than 1 millimeter pieces. And he decorated these sticks with different patterns of decorations. And also, he colored these pigments with different colors and put also a gilded leaf over this tree bark. And he write the name of the king, Tutankhamun, in his cartouche in small pieces. Now we ask ourselves how the ancient Egyptian makes these magnificent objects.
Yes.
And that is a very challenge for us to survey these objects.
Of course.
You have to know everything about your object, and you know the materials that you are using in conservation, and making an experimental study on these materials away from this object until you get a good results, and then you can apply this to these archaeological artifacts.
Okay. Apart from that, sir, what did you find out that actually demonstrated the genius of the ancient Egyptians when it came to the usage of wood?
I think it will be the stakes, one of the most amazing, fantastic objects, and also the techniques of plastering the wood. They use different techniques for decorating the wood.
I'm sure as time goes by, you'll be discovering things that will go back to the wood manufacturing maybe, and wood manufacturers might be benefiting from those secrets too.
Exactly.
Okay. Yes.
I'd like to thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Medhat Abdullah, Director of Wood Museum at the Grand Egyptian Museum. It has been a great pleasure to have you with us at Nile Cruise.
Thank you very much, sir, for being with us in this edition of Nile Cruise. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
And this actually brings us to the end of this edition of Nile Cruise. We'd like to thank you very much for joining us, and I'd like to thank Hal Hamalawi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharif. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us in this edition of Nile Cruise. Today we were with you live from the Grand Egyptian Museum, due to it to open soon. I hope that in this edition we managed to shed some light of this great project. Thank you for now, and we'll leave you with the hour's news with the new edition of Panorama News. Now we're signing off.
Goodbye.